everyone, and welcome to another week's episode of the Fantasy Fiends podcast. We are so excited to have JT Williams here. I'm Stevie Collier, and I'm here with my co-host, Andy Peliquin. And has anyone told you today that you look fantastic? Not you guys, but the person viewing.
Oh, I was going to say, it's this new shampoo that I've been trying, and I just feel amazing. No,
you feel sexy?
I hate my hair pooping.
Yeah, what's up with your hair?
Yeah, it's just a bad hair. I'm going to get a haircut next week or something, and then I'll be back to normal. Yeah.
Did you wake up from a nap, or? I mean, it's kind of what it looks like right there.
I've been writing like a madman today. But yeah, I came back from CrossFit and washed my hair and just sat down and worked without caring what it looked like.
Oh, if it's CrossFit, that's a good. Hey, your mic is scratchy, by the way. So real quick, JT, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I write dark fantasy.
Yes,
lots of dark fantasy. I have several series out: Half-Elf Chronicles, Stormborn Saga, Saints of Wura, all related world. A lot of the characters kind of jump between series if they survive. That's the key. A lot of death in my stuff. I had to describe myself to someone who questioned me. They were like, "Well, I really like happy endings like Disney." And I'm like, "Well, I'm more like Pixar beginnings. I like rip your heart out a little bit." So that's kind of what I do.
Do you end on ripping hearts out, or like sometimes. A hybrid sometimes?
I try not to. Like I try for stories to kind of have an upbeat, at least in the very end. But especially with Half-Elf Chronicles and the notorious Book 3 Shadow of the Orc Star, no real spoiler here, but 23 characters, 18 of them die.
Holy!
That is my kind of.
I kill people. Hi.
You're like George R.R. Martin.
You know, that's cool. I like that because with that particular book, my soundtrack, I literally listened to this, was The Rains of Castamere. So, and that's the song during the Red Wedding.
Yeah, great song.
Are you familiar with the Red Wedding?
Oh, everyone knows the Red Wedding. Even if you haven't seen Game of Thrones or read the books, you know what the Red Wedding is.
Yeah, it was great. Loved it. Loved every bit of it.
That was the last episode I ever watched because I had to walk away and regain myself, regain my composure. Seriously, that was the last episode. I just couldn't take it anymore. So I haven't watched Game of Thrones probably 2 years now. So yeah, I have a lot to catch up on.
It was quite a hit.
It's rough. It was just freaking rough. I don't know if I'd have the courage to write something like that. I don't want to give anything away, but man, just that one part. Okay, I can't.
Yeah. So I can tell you, I got some flack from that. I continue to get flack from that, and I do get comments from people that go, "Oh, I'm not going to keep reading because that was just too dark." I get it.
You have?
It worked. Oh yeah, I definitely have. Now the people who read the next book consistently read every other thing. So it doesn't stay that dark, but yeah, it's definitely a dark story, and that's kind of what I do.
Well, there's nothing wrong with dark fantasy. I think Andy and I both agree that dark fantasy is the best genre ever. So even though my next series I don't think is going to be dark fantasy, sadly, but it will have tendencies to go towards that dark side.
I'm writing more. I consider myself now epic fantasy with a dark twist because that's a much broader category.
Yeah.
But if you go to dark fantasy on Amazon, it's almost all urban fantasy. Nothing against urban fantasy, but when I clicked on dark fantasy originally, when I first started publishing and getting into the world, I was like, "What's all this? This isn't dark. Vampires? Vampires aren't necessarily dark."
Vampires with huge boobs and just weird stuff, man. Real quick, so I like to start these podcasts with something cool that happened to you this week. I guess I should have warned you about this. Do I call you JT or do you was it Jeremy? I think Andy.
Jeremy's fine. Jeremy's fine.
Okay. Andy, is there anything cool that happened to you this week?
No, nothing out of the ordinary. I mean, I put in about 40,000 words on the last book in the Hunter series, Hero of Darkness.
40,000?
Yeah. Today I am, like, literally before we started the podcast, I was working on the second to last chapter. So tomorrow morning I get to write the very end of the Hunter story. Yeah.
Are you sad?
Not as sad as when I finished writing Ilana's story. That was the one that really was like, I can't believe that I don't get to tell any more of her stories, because that one had a much more natural ending. Whereas the Hunter's story, I left it open enough that I could do more books without it feeling like pushing it. Whereas Ilana's story was very much self-contained and ended satisfyingly.
So that's a really cool thing that happened to you this week. Well, it's going to happen, right? You're going to finish the Hunter series, which is the Hunter series is what got me talking to Andy, because I emailed him, like, dude, love your book. And then we just became friends because I'm so lovable, you know.
Actually, there was a scene in this book and I was like, oh, the Hunter's going to kill someone by stabbing them in the crotch, which is what you, and I totally thought of you when I wrote that.
Yes. Well, all right, Jeremy, did you think of something, or I can go?
I got something.
Okay, cool. Go for it.
It was yesterday, in about a 2-hour window using audio dictation through Dragon. I wrote a short story of about 6,000 words, completely. Just I pantsed it, as you would call it. Yeah, I've got like a side project I'm doing. 2 of them actually. Both are anthologies, and then I have a book, which I guess the genre is not so much dark fantasy as it is post-apocalyptic epic fantasy. And so it's kind of in a
like Shannara.
Yeah. Do what?
Shannara, it's set in a futuristic version of this world.
Actually, no. Mine is set in an epic fantasy world similar to Lord of the Rings, except that basically the Dark Lords won, as opposed to let's defeat the Dark Lord. It's like, crap. Let's try to survive as a species or a race. So that's what I'm doing with this. But I had a little bit of a dry spell between my normal job and writing. I hadn't actually put any words down. I was like, you know what? I got to write this. I want to get it done. I got this cool idea. Let's just run with it. And I was like, okay, cool. Story done. One day.
Dang. Awesome. So are you going to give it away for free?
This one's going into an anthology. So not necessarily, but eventually this might be like something I do for people who sign up for the mailing list. Yeah, again, it's a pretty short one. I have one other story that's of this length, and I give it away for free on Amazon for, kind of give people an intro to me. So.
Okay. Awesome, man. Man, y'all have like all like really cool like things happen to you this week that have to do with your writing, and me is I scheduled my first surfing lesson for Saturday.
Man, y'all have like all.
So, I have a really sexy voice.
Surfing in Texas, huh, Stevie?
Yeah. So if you look it up, so I've surfed since I was 16 years old. I met this girl named Michelle, and she was like, "I'm a surfer. You should come check out surfing." I'm like, "Oh yeah, let's go do it." As soon as her ass got out there, she left me on my own board. I had no idea what the heck I was doing, and so I just kind of had to teach myself how to surf. But now that I'm living in Texas, I feel like I've lost all of my skills. I'm hoping it's like riding a bicycle. You never forget. But there's this park called Inland Surf Park, and it is an actual surf park in Austin, Texas, where you get the perfect wave every 20 seconds. And it's the only one in the US. And I think they have one in somewhere in Asia. I can't remember. But it was like $90, but I've been wanting to do it for so long, and it's going to like reestablish my foundations. And hopefully, by the end of the summer, I'll be back to my level of surfing. Super excited. So
you hill country people, y'all get all the cool stuff.
I know, it's so cool. It's like an hour away from Lake Travis. So I was surprised. So anyway, that's my cool thing. And guys, for our viewers, we have a super cool topic today. Andy, take it away.
Right. Okay. So this was actually suggested by our awesome guest. It's what is the life worth? And so I know one of the things that often come up in fantasy, I know it's come up in my own writing, is like, right, so what do you, if you're going to do something, is it worth it? Is it worth sacrificing someone else to do it? Let's say the hero has to say, okay, I don't want to sacrifice my love interest even if it means saving the world. So I'm going to try to find another way. Or sacrificing my love interest is worth doing to save the world. And so it's that interesting question that what is a life worth? When is it okay to sacrifice one person, 10 people, 100 people, 1,000 people for something else? Sort of like that question of, you know, the train's coming and you've got to decide either kill 1 people or 5 people, and you don't really have a choice. You have to choose. And so I think we talked about this in a previous podcast. Most people will immediately say the one person, you know, because it's 1 death versus 5 deaths. But then now what if that one person is your best friend or your girlfriend? What if those 5 people are murderers? What if the one, you know, and so the more detailed you get, the harder it is to answer that question. And that's kind of one of the fun things that we get to do as fantasy authors, is pose these questions and then come up with an answer that we believe.
True that, man. I'm glad you brought up the train thing, because if you look up on YouTube Vsauce, the guy who does Vsauce, he's super cool and always has some really fascinating stuff to talk about. He's one of the first people, I think he is the first person to actually do the train experiment. He went to like a board of people that, you know, were professionals. He talked to a psychiatrist. They had one on the actual like experiment. They had one on set, you know, and it turns out that some people will, you know, turn it to the one person to kill him to save more than one. And then some people just won't do anything. They're so shocked and so scared. Other people didn't know how to use the controls, and that's what they blamed it on. And the coolest part about this video, and you should totally go watch it, is one guy took it very seriously, and you see him like looking at the controls, because all he has to do is switch a switch and it's going to kill 1 person or it's going to kill 6, because they have this like this mock train coming at these people. It's all fake, it's all filmed, and he switches it to the 1 person and he immediately starts crying, and they stop the tape, or they stop the experiment, and the psychologist or psychiatrist, whichever, walks in with the Vsauce guy, and they explain to him what happened, and he goes through a psychoanalysis or psyche analysis, you know, all that stuff. And super interesting video. You should go check it out. Okay, that was my big spiel, but it's like a 20-minute video. So I'm surprised it was something that they could do legally, you know, because that could really screw some people up, in my opinion. I'm
assuming they had to sign a few waivers.
Yeah, maybe they didn't read all the fine. You know, you will be tricked today.
For me, a lot of it comes down to a question of morals. You know, if you got 2 people about to be hit by a train, and it's a question of, well, you know, they're both 30 years old, but one has cancer. As sad as that would be, would you probably pick the one with cancer? Likely. But, you know, I can give kind of a real world example of how I've thankfully never been in this situation, but I could find myself with my job. I'm a paramedic, and we have something called triage. You know, if we have a mass casualty, for example, a bus runs off a bridge and we have 30 plus patients, we can't save everybody. It's impossible to, if you've got multiple patients that are, you know, barely breathing, you have 5 that are still breathing, maybe still conscious, and you have tons of people walking. Well, you try to get the people who aren't injured out first, and then you literally go person to person. And there's a few different acronyms, different ways depending on your protocol. But if I see someone laying there, I look at them. If they're not breathing, I open their airway. If they don't start breathing, they're dead. Now, if we're talking, you know, that's a big situation where I'm literally going person to person, and I'm choosing, you know, this person might be breathing-ish. This person's bleeding out. Do I put pressure on the person bleeding out, or do I assist the person breathing? And in that situation, it's you look at viability. You look at who has the better chance of actually surviving, because you can't put your hands on everybody. You'd love to, it just doesn't work out that way.
That was actually in an episode of Chicago Fire. And now I know this is not real life experience at all, but it was one of the most visceral, episodes, because basically they're lining people up. It's a bus crash or a train crash or something. They're lining people out on the ground, and there's some guy, he's just going and he's tagging them with black means they're dead, red means they're critical, green means they're okay. Or it's just like it's so arbitrary in many ways. There is certain protocol to follow, and these guys have to be detached. I'm sure, Jeremy, you've got to do that too. You've kind of got to say, okay, I see that there's this woman who's got a baby, and as much as I want to save her, the fact that she has, a crushed ribs or something means I cannot save her. There is someone else over here who has a higher chance of living, so I have to save them. And so, like, it's got to be really gutting for you in that sort of situation.
Yeah. Thankfully, I personally have not been in one with a mass casualty. I've had several incidents where I've had tons of patients, but never where I was in that exact situation. I mean, at that point, it becomes a bit of science and experience is really what plays into how you make those decisions. A lot of times in our writing, in books, in movies, there can be other motivations. If you're going to, are we going to save the princess, or are we going to let the princess get eaten by the dragon and get all the villagers out? As a quick example.
Yeah. And that's, like I was saying, it's kind of interesting to be able to do that, because I'm sure for you as a paramedic, they do have protocols established, at least basic protocols, like you said, the acronyms that sort of say check certain things, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically if I had a bus that had overturned, I would look into the bus and go, everybody can walk, get out.
Right.
That's green. Those are people that you're not going to really worry about right now. They're not critical. Then you're going to go through, and as you're going through these patients that can't walk, you're marking them dead with the black or red with the critical. And I mean, if I've got a ton that are just obviously dead, they're all black, I go for the few reds. It gets questionable though when you have a ton of of people who might be red, and you have to kind of go, okay, well, I have tons of resources available, which around here, that's what we have, or out in the middle of nowhere, Texas, or any rural place, you may not have anyone coming except you, your partner, and a few, fire department volunteers. You might have life flight coming in 45 minutes. So at that point, you really get into a situation where you use what hands you got as best you can. And like I said, thankfully, I haven't been in that situation, but you can watch. Everyone's watched the news. There's been multiple incidences, everything from Vegas to the school shootings and whatnot. Those are situations where that triage came into play in real life. And you see some of the scenes, if you see like from the air and you see like a green tarp on the ground or a yellow tarp on the ground, that's literally for people. It's a visual representation. Hey, go to the green tarp. Yellow is for your yellow is, not so bad. Red is the critical. We gotta get these people out of here right now. Right. They're the first to be transported out. Most cases, a broken arm, you're yellow. You active bleeds, arterial bleeds, something like that. You have a tourniquet on somebody, that might even be yellow, depending on the rest of the people. You gotta look at the grand scheme. And I mean, we have a process. You typically have one person making these decisions. You have one person, so you don't have 10 people who are all running through doing the same thing, going, well, I don't think this person's a red. I think they're yellow. Or I think this person's a black. You don't want to play that moral game, I guess.
And it's usually someone with a lot more experience as a paramedic saying, okay, this sort of. Is there like, I know in medical TV shows and movies and stuff, they have like sort of acronyms of things to check for, whether it's check that the airway is clear and that they're breathing and their neck. Like, what is the process that they train you? What's the protocol in this?
We're talking about if we're talking about a mass casualty, it's generally you look at them. If they are breathing, you open their airway. If they're still not breathing, they're dead.
Okay.
And you keep moving. I mean, that's really to go between red and black. Because sometimes maybe it's just you got to open airway and they'll start spontaneously breathing. If you open it, nothing. Your skills and your tools are better utilized to keep someone else alive. Because yeah, I mean different protocols, different places. If we go on a scene of a traumatic accident where we get there and they're dead, a lot of protocols nowadays, you're not working somebody. You might do some, we call it dart in the chest. I'm not going to get all in the medical terminology, but basically, you have enough trauma that kills you. It doesn't matter what medications you give. Your issue is typically structural. Your aorta's been torn. your ribs are crushed and they've knocked out both your lungs. You've got something structural. It's not like a medical cardiac arrest where you've got a heart blockage or an electrical issue in your heart. If it's from a traumatic accident and you're not breathing, you're pulseless, you generally needed a surgeon 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So that's why, it's, yeah. I mean, as he said, it can be rough, but I've definitely been on several of those where I've got on scene and unfortunately they, either they had an injury incompatible with life, which is a fancy way of saying, they had an open skull fracture, something of that nature, that they weren't breathing, and that at that point, or like a decapitation. That's an injury incompatible with life.
You've seen that?
Yeah.
Oh, God.
Okay, so I don't want to scare people there with the way I laughed about that. I'm not laughing about that, but no, I have seen that.
That's why you write dark fantasy, huh? You're just gotta get it out. But you have seen that. I mean, okay, so feel free not to. You don't have to answer this question, but has it ever bothered you, or are you so used to it now? Has it ever inspired your writing?
Yeah, I mean, of course, it has bothered me at some point. I'm not gonna say it's cliche, but typically children, small, babies, that one really hits everybody. I would say the hardest thing is family. So, and what I mean by that is going there, seeing what I need to do, and going, okay, this person's died, this person's been killed, is one thing. But then either having to tell the family and be present for that, or seeing the aftermath. Even if like I have no interaction, I've had it where I had a very small child that I did not get back, and I was walking out. And I'll look over and I see the family, and the doctor actually hasn't spoken with the family. In this case, we transport to the hospital. Doctor hasn't spoken to the family yet, and I'm just watching, and I'm seeing what they're praying, they're doing that kind of thing, and they don't know yet. I know they don't know yet.
Oh God,
that kind of stuff kills you. That's probably. I mean, I can't say everyone's different. Everyone deals with it differently. There's a reason why it doesn't matter if it's police, fire, or EMS. When you go to the first little bit of your first academy, the very first chapter of it is talking about stress. It's a very stressful job, and to have a healthy outlet. And unfortunately, a lot of people choose unhealthy things, which kind of leads in. I mean, one of my big stress reliefs is writing, working out, that kind of thing, spending time with family. That's the big key for me. You ask if it influenced my writing. Yes, in a therapy type way, but also in a realistic. I mean, because I've seen so many things, I can describe quite accurately what a broken skull feels like because I've put my hands on one. So it definitely adds a degree of realism that most people don't know. Now, obviously, I don't go into detail more than the story requires, but when occasionally someone will ask me to read something, and it's typically fantasy and fighting, and they'll describe something, and they'll be like, his artery was busted, and they'll say blood was running down his arm and trickling. I'm like, no, arteries don't trickle. Arteries spurt. They shoot blood. Unless you're near the end and you're almost out of blood. But yeah.
I got lucky with that one then. I have a part where I forgot what it was. I think his finger gets cut off, but I said the spurting of the blood mimicked his heartbeat, and that's always perfect. Stuck. What? Oh, it is good.
Perfect. Yeah, that's what the spurt is. It's rhythmic, just like your heart. It's your heart. That's how the system works.
Take notes, Andy. Take notes. I actually just got a little bit nervous now because I write a lot of fight scenes for this assassin character, and I'm just hoping that I got them all right.
And it's no offense to anyone, but I mean, most readers aren't going to catch it. I'm picky.
Yeah, no, you're right.
Most people, you just describe it well, and it's a fun, engaging story. They're not going to get bent out of shape about it. I'll read your stuff. I'll just read your stuff and judge it harshly and send you messages about it.
Yeah, I would actually change it
silently.
We actually had
I would totally change it.
Yeah,
I'll read your stuff and judge it harshly and send you messages about it.
That's the great thing about being an indie publisher is you can do stuff like that. And I was going to say, we actually had a lady, I apologize that I don't know her name. This is our 46th episode and I'm already terrible at names as it is, but she was an arson detective or something. and she could actually tell you what burning bodies smelled like and stuff like that.
Oh yeah,
remember that? I thought that was so
Yeah.
cool. Now we have Jeremy who knows what a crushed skull feels like. So Jeremy, I'm going to be emailing you. Hey, I have this guy. I'm about to shove a dagger in his groin. What's that feel like? What's that look like?
Yeah. It's I was Googling the thing that I was talking about, the acronym. It's called the ABCs. It stands for airway, breathing, and circulation. And it's what they teach for that sort of treatments.
Yeah, so ABCs is kind of a real basic mnemonic. When you're talking about a mass casualty, it becomes like one example is RPM, respirations, pulse, that kind of thing. ABCs is a real common everyday thing. So if I look at you, I can just, your airway's open, you're breathing because you're sitting up talking to me, and so you have a pulse. Yeah. But then if I got someone down on the ground, first thing I'm going to check is airway. And if they've choked on something, the first thing you want to fix is airway. If you don't have an airway, you're not going to be breathing, you're not going to have a pulse eventually. So you got to fix the earliest stage.
Have you ever had to be in a position where you had to choose which person you were going to work on? Even if it was, minor, not death.
Yeah, that's not too uncommon. I've had two different cars. They both hit each other going about 50. I went to the patients I saw that were bleeding, and I sent my partner to the other vehicle, because that's typically if the higher level provider goes to what they consider the more critical, looking at damage and blood, for example. And so I went to them. My people actually end up being fine, and then what I see is my partner goes back to the truck for something, goes back out, and then they're calling for life flight, and I'm like, what's going on? So obviously I go over to where they are. And while everyone in the car was out except for one lady, their ankles were missing.
Oh, what? How do you miss an ankle? You mean everything below the ankle?
Like the force of this caused basically the bones to break off at the ankles.
Oh,
that's the only way I can describe it.
Oh,
so it was
so bad.
Do they are they feeling it, or are they just delirious, or?
Well, I don't understand. Maybe this person was on medications. I don't know. I don't remember at this point. But they had to kind of be told. We were it's like, oh, I'll just get out. We're like, no, don't wait. And I remember. I actually remember reaching my hand to support, because I say completely off. They weren't completely off. They were holding on by the Achilles, the big tendon on the back of your foot and ankle.
Good God.
And so literally I reached down and grabbed those and kind of held those. And it was just like, you're not in pain? Really? It's weird. It's bizarre.
Whoa.
Normally the people that are screaming, I want pain meds, are the people with the busted finger. The people that are, oh, I'm okay, it's not that bad, are the people that absolutely need pain meds. And you're like, what? I got told off by a survivor of the Battle of Normandy once. He fell. Had broken his hip really badly. And I was like, okay, we're going to use some pain meds. He was like, what the heck for? I'm like, well, you broke, this looks pretty painful. That's not painful. Painful is when they took my M1 and gave me that piece of crap gun that I didn't even like, and made me jump in the beaches of Normandy, and I got shot 6 times. Like, oh? He's like, yeah. You ever shot an M1? I was like, no, sir. He goes, M1s are what you use to kill people. I like them. They gave me a bad gun. I got shot. That hurt. I was like, wow. So no pain meds?
Wow. That is, I love the Battle of Normandy, by the way. I really, next time I go to France, I know it's off topic, but I just love that. It's such a stupid thing that happened. Anyway, it is. But God, I really after this podcast, I want to sit down and write some more, because I just ideas are just bubbling in my mind. Something else, a little bit off topic, but not really, is Jeremy, do you realize when you're at a scene, do you realize how, and this actually goes back to last week's episode, how heroic you look? I remember I was with my grandma and she went, I believe the word's comatose, like just you could not, just out of it, just like, and she started talking to like someone that wasn't there. And when these paramedics came, at regular people, right, to the entire family, these were like mini gods coming in to save the day. And I'll always remember that feeling of, wow, these people do this every day. And it actually inspired a few chapters in the Four Territories of how I wanted my main character to be, you know, for other people. But do you ever like feel that adrenaline rush, like I'm here to save the day, like a superhero, or is it just work?
We're gonna call it just work. When you're brand new to it, you get a lot of the adrenaline rush. But adrenaline's funny because adrenaline clouds your mind. You know, it's supposed to focus you, but what you try not to do is get too focused on the wrong thing. That can happen. Or if you walk onto a scene, it's a horrible scene, or you walk on a scene and it's a child that's not breathing, and you're looking. If you let yourself get involved too much with that, you're not going to perform. You're not going to work. And so, I mean, especially having a few years in it, you don't really have the adrenaline so much. It's more of a. So, for example, when you said your grandmother was comatose, and I just kind of talking off the top of her head, or however you described it.
Yeah.
My mind immediately goes to, was she diabetic because her blood sugar was low?
She was diabetic.
So that was my first thought, and
nice,
that's how that goes. So when I walk into a scene, I immediately go, you know, what's going on? And I'll start doing things as I'm asking questions. And so if you were to go, oh, well, she didn't take her insulin, or she took her insulin and didn't eat, I'm going to focus towards that. I'm going to check her blood sugar. And when I see her blood sugar's 20, I'm going to go, okay, we got this. It's you make, that's how I think. I mean, if I see a problem, it's how to fix that problem.
Andy, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, that's one thing a lot of people don't realize about EMS. You know, especially considering it's a new field compared to nursing or medical school or doctors. You know, a lot of people think, oh, call 911, go to the hospital. They don't realize everything we do in the house. You know, if you got someone who's unconscious, not breathing, or is having really difficulty, trouble breathing, there's a lot we do. I mean, we can do everything from simply taking you to the hospital to sedating you, paralyzing the muscles that control your breathing, and placing a tube down your throat. I mean, we can.
The paramedics did everything in the house. They did everything in the house. It was like being in the room with like 6 doctors, and all of them are talking this code. I had no idea what was going on. It was absolutely fascinating. Andy, did you have a question for Jeremy?
I was gonna. It was not on the topic. I was gonna ask you when you were done with this. Have you had to, in your books, have you had to write that question of what is a life worth for your characters?
Yes. I mean, I'll reference Half-Elf Chronicles because I'm actively writing a final book in it, so it's fresh on my mind. But in those books, I hate characters that don't have a motivation.
Totally.
That I don't know why they're doing something. A really good example of that, I may step on some toes here, is the new Star Wars movies. I have some very big fundamental issues as a storyteller about those movies.
Well, this was the end of the Fantasy Fiends podcast. We hope you had a great day, everyone. Oh, kidding. Go ahead.
But that is a good example. A character, if a character doesn't have motivation, they're not a character to me, because everybody has a motivation. You have a motivation. I have a motivation, and in my particular stuff, in my writing, my main character's motivation is typically his siblings. He will do everything he can to save his siblings. Between book 2 and book 3, it's to save his sister. That's who he's trying to save, and he doesn't really care what he has to do to get to her. In fact, between book 1 and book 2, he is basically an undercover, moving from place to place, just trying to figure out some hint of where she is. Killing as needed. He doesn't really care. He's not from the region where he's traveling. He doesn't have any alliances he's having to worry about, or potentially angering somebody. And that's pretty much what gets him in trouble, is because he will literally do anything, and no one holds any regard to him. And the transition you get to, at least for him, is he goes from just seeing that to seeing a greater picture, and ends up in a situation where he can save his sibling if he kills somebody. But if he kills this person, he risks basically a whole subsect of his own race that are falling into a trap.
Andy has a lot of my favorite books have that motivation, and a part in Andy's book, the first book in the last few Solari series, which it is not that yet, and I don't know if I'm supposed to reveal the title, but there's not yet. But there's a scene where he actually is caring for these, like the slums of Veramis, and in my opinion, that was the hunter's motivation, or at least that was him trying to find a motivation to continue what he's doing, because he has to feed this dagger, which is super freaking great concept. And another one of my favorite books, Kings of the Wild, also is about this father trying to save his daughter.
That's exactly what I was gonna bring that.
Oh,
one
you
up.
are. I didn't mean to step on your toes.
I know how much Stevie likes that. No, it's cool.
I love that book.
Yeah, that's I like that kind of idea. I have blood magic, and I know that other fantasy stories have it. But in mine, in particular, you have to use. You can't just have random blood laying around. It has to be fresh. And in one particular scene, it kind of serves a point, because in these books, we reach a point in the plot to where they're moving across a desert, attempting to build an army of undead. And by the way they're building this army is literally destroying cities they come across and killing everybody. And as a reader, and I mean as a writer, I started looking at this. I'm going, wow, they kind of seem like the bad guys here, because we're not really seeing any other bad guys. They're dropping all these just legions of undead warriors, killing all of these people. It doesn't matter if they're warriors, if they're peasants. It just doesn't matter, and resurrecting them. And I was thinking, I was like, wow, they kind of seem like the bad guys here. But so I had to show, I have a scene that happens after we sack one of these cities, where one of the head priestess grabs a child and kills her to engorge her own magic and attack one of the other characters. And it sets one of my other main characters into such a rage. Not only do they kill this person, they technically break one of their own laws of magic, and I visibly describe them killing the person, summoning their soul, and destroying their soul. Wow. And basically saying, I may destroy an entire city, but I at least gave you time to get your children out, which in this case they did. They told them, they basically said, we're coming. They weren't trying to hide their army. It was massive and it was moving towards them. And actually they waited to let a lot of the children out. And at least in that particular case, hold on. Something popped up on my phone. Stand by.
Oh, no problem.
I will interject there. In the book that I'm just finishing writing now, there is this question of the hunter has to choose. He's come all this way to his final destination with this kid that he's basically become sort of a surrogate father for, and has sworn to protect, trying to find a way to heal him and cure him and all of that. And so the whole time he's trying to get this kid back. And there's danger if he doesn't get the kid back. But then in the final confrontation, he has to say, okay, if I let this child die, I can save the world. Or I save this child, and then the whole world is screwed. And he says, I'll find another way, because he's the hunter and he's awesome. But there is that question. And I had to, as I was writing it, the last couple of days, I had to sit, and it really took a lot out of me to create these different steps that the hunter goes through, both physically and emotionally, to get from, if I let this child die, or if I kill this child, then the world is saved. Am I willing to risk the world for the sake of this child? And I just wrote the final scene today where he finally comes to understand his rationalization, the way he feels, all of that. But it was 2 or 3 days worth of work of thinking about it, because it is a really difficult question.
Stand by on my end.
Okay. If it was up to me, I don't really know how I would do that. If it was, okay, I'm going to let a child die to save the world. We're talking millions of children, hundreds of thousands at least. Am I okay with that? Now this child is my child. Am I okay with that? Like it's such a hard question to answer. And that's what I found so fascinating about this topic, is that you
Now-
can spin it pretty much any way. You have to ask yourself, in the context of the story that you're telling, how can I make this character okay with the decision to or to not kill that child or that person?
So who ended up answering the question, you or the hunter?
Well, I don't necessarily see my characters as being separate from myself, so I was the one who did it. Yeah, basically, I had to put myself in the hunter's position and say, okay, if it was me in this, if I was the one facing this with these circumstances, with this emotional connection to this person and that person, what would I do? And I think that the ending that I came up with was one that really showcased the hunter's emotional journey from the badass assassin at the beginning of book 1 to the badass assassin at the end of book 6.
Nice.
But and so the thing that he does to say, okay, I can't see myself killing this kid to save the world, but I can see myself doing this. Ultimately, he does end up saving the world, because the world would be destroyed if he didn't. So,
yeah.
But it was a really interesting, emotional, philosophical, and intellectual journey to go on for this book.
The book I'm writing now has also been very, very emotionally taxing. I wrote this character who reminds me of my little brother, and I just had to do something very terrible to him. And it actually, like, I'm sitting in a coffee shop and I'm like, this sucks. Like, I don't want to write this scene. And that was the first time I've ever actually been like, I really don't want to write this scene, but I have to do it. But anyway, Andy, do you want to actually get to the reading today, or do you want to skip it?
Yeah, we definitely want to get to the reading.
We do want to do it today?
Yes.
Okay.
But first, our commercial break.
All right. I'm excited.
All right. Let me just open it up. My computer is having some fun. All right. This episode is brought to you by The Half-Elf Chronicles by J.T. Williams. The elves have been called to war. A prophecy is revealed that foretells doom for all the warriors who depart. In order to avert the disaster, Kaelin and his half-blood siblings embark into the frigid seas of the north aboard an enchanted ship. In a perilous journey, Kaelin discovers a power that is not elven in nature. He is changing. As the blood of an ancient race surges in his veins, a power awakens within his mind, tying him to a powerful and dangerous culture. From start to finish, this book will keep you on the edge of your seat. The Half-Elf Chronicles by J.T. Williams. Read for free right now on Amazon Kindle Unlimited, and find out more about the epic fantasy worlds of author J.T. Williams at authorjtwilliams.com. Epic fantasy with a true dark twist. Embrace the Half-Bloods. Prepare for the end.
Very nice. I love it.
Those sound good.
I also want to add that if you go down to the description, I've added there's a special book that you can read by J.T. Williams just for listeners, or you know what I mean. Go to the description below, click on the link, and you can download a cool short story by J.T. Williams. And we are about to start the reading. And by the way, Kaelin is an awesome name. Bafnor.
You like that? You
I
like
do.
that?
I also like Bafnor.
Bafnor.
Okay.
Yes.
So do you want to give Andy and I some parts to play, and you can read the narrator?
Who wants to be the girl?
I'll be the girl. I'll do it. I can do it. I'm not afraid.
Right. Yeah, so that was in the little. Let me find it in this. I've actually got a book by chance. It's nice.
Oh, nice.
Sweet.
Paper. All right. Well, I need one for Bafnor, obviously.
I'll do that.
You'll be the angry dwarf.
Yes,
Oh, he's
dwarf.
perfect. Perfect for Andy.
Can I do Scottish voice?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, that works perfect. And I can that sounds good. I'll do narration, and we'll have Keelan and Rizea, the female. Yeah. Kaelin, it's all right. I'm gonna get picky on it right now.
Who's the girl? What's the girl's name?
Rizea.
Rizea. Okay, and Rizea, is she just like soft spoken, or
she's kind of she got this. It's not in the part we read. She actually got her eye ripped out in a previous battle.
Oh,
and
good.
So she's it's great. She's kind of like angry, pissed off, and almost demoralized. Really.
So I should talk like a pirate now.
Bafnor and her have been in prison for a while, basically awaiting their deaths. At this point in my world's history, the Grand Protectorate, which is kind of like the Roman Empire, is just now starting to pull the race. I hate to say it like this, but it's kind of like a racism card. Basically, if you're not of the race of men, if you're of the race of magic, or if you're of any race of magic, elves, dwarves, the Russes, which is a created race of mine, they're slowly starting to turn that you're evil for one reason or another, be it religious, which works for a good while, or just because. And you'll see, and as we go through this little part here, they're flat out lying. They're telling them, "Oh, our armies are fighting. Continue your support," because they're wanting more money, more people, and they're slowly trying to incorporate all of the lands, all of the houses of men that still exist under their wing. And so no one has any personal armies, personal property, and they're slowly just taking over everything. And so in this particular scene, the gladiators are of the race of men, who are the good guys, and you've got the elves, the dwarf, and for at least a short time period, a large troll that is supposed to be the prey, the bad guys. Let's beat them up.
Awesome.
All for the expectation of the crowd.
Great.
Very cool.
Okay, well, I'm ready.
All right. So it starts with me. No friends in this world.
Hold on. Got it. All right, go for it.
No friends in this world.
Ask Bafnor.
Is this me?
Yes.
Oh, 1. A whale of the north called a narwhal, a companion for a long time since the mutual loss of our siblings. Many of her kind fell as well in the dark of the glacial seas. As of others like me or you, I have the occasional friendly acquaintance, but all things are temporary.
A horn sounded above them, loud and long, reverberating through the walls. 2 more blasts followed up in the same fashion. They scampered to their feet. Up the walkway, the door began to open, letting in light from the upper level.
Who is Kalen?
You.
Oh, I am. This is the guy?
Yeah.
That's you. Yeah.
Now is the time.
Keelan said.
Let us fight well together and defeat the gladiators. We must rally our troll friends as well. He may have some chance with us. We must encourage him.
They began up the steep path. Keelan gripped his swords and drew both out as he neared the edge of the passageway. He stepped onto the sand to the crowd's roar, which turned to a booing sound as each of them emerged. Rocks flew from above, striking them as insults began.
Tree sprites in a fat walking rock, as dumb as the grey beast from before. At least one of the bastards is dead.
Keelan wondered for only a moment of what they spoke of. The stands around them formed a large circle, a single large pillar set in the center of the arena. Chained to the pillar was the troll they had seen back at Tubor's house. The beast had been cut up. His head was disfigured with large sticks. His legs were torn from his torso. But even with these injuries, it still made an intermittent breathing sound. It was unconscious and dying, but not yet dead. A large box set off from the arena just above the sands, but far enough to be safe from striking distance. Keelan walked with the others to a spot just in front of the arena. Admiral Uri, the man that had captured Keelan before, lifted his hands. The audience's shouting and roaring gradually quieted, and he began to speak. I can do this voice.
Okay.
People of Seer, welcome to the celebration of cultures. There was a slight laugh among those around him. He quieted them with his other hand. The celebration of cultures is but a taste of events to come. We started with the... Hold on, what the heck?
What? What the heck was that?
There's a cat. All right, I will continue. The celebration of cultures is but a taste of events to come. We started with the slaying of a beast by the grand gladiator warriors of the House of Tuhor. Whilst his warriors prepare for the grand celebration, we present you as first the competitors to the gladiators, the second races of elf and dwarf, those who have slaughtered hundreds in the wake of sunrise, across our vast lands. We must unite as one race against the evils and travesty that you see. It is the Grand Protectorate that will unify you, men and women of the lands, against the evils within. The vast legions march in battle against their kind, and we will show you the weakness that is the common elf and dwarf. With your continued support of coin and bodies to fight within the legions, you will see these cursed beasts destroyed.
A cheer erupted, and Keelan looked at both Bafnor and Revea.
Steady yourselves.
But first,
The man speaking before said,
a small word from the master of the gladiators you will see again, and of the terrible events that struck our prisons last night.
Keelan noticed that Tubor stood to the left side. He pointed, and a small gateway opened. Legionary guards dragged something from the darkness.
Stevie, take this guy.
People of Sir, last night a tragedy befell our men guarding the vial of the regions. Tubor shouted. A rogue person, another of the cursed races, attacked the prison, causing havoc unlike seen before. The bitch of a creature then tried to act as if she was ill to cover up her deeds. But I dare say I knew her as one of my own, a Russus by the name of Jessia.
Kaelin's hand grips his short swords tighter as the men drag Jessia in front of them by just a few paces. She looked over to him with open eyes. They cut her bindings, and she sat up. Kaelin went to her and pulled her toward them.
Are you okay?
He asked.
I am tired and bruised, but well. I had thought to end her life,
said Tubor.
I control her as a simple dog as the bitch is, but instead I will add to those here, seeing as one must be taken away.
Keelan looked to his side as men came behind Revea, ripping her staff from her and dragging her from the line.
What are you doing?
She screamed.
This one is pot blind,
noted Tubor.
An unwilling sacrifice to you, good people of Sir. Just as the beast before was slain, we shall slay her as unfit to fight.
The men dragged her, kicking and shouting toward the same chains where the troll was slayed. While 3 men held her, others took chains and ran them around the pillar, locking them to cuffs that were slammed on her arms. They pulled her body tight against the corpse of the creature, and a man took an axe out.
Now wait,
said Tubor.
I believe your dear lord wishes a special act here.
The Lord of Seer indeed does.
A man wearing red robes stood up.
People of Sir, I am gaining age, but my son is fresh in years. At 12, he has seen much, but he will be the ruling hand for many more years. I would have him finish off the elf.
From the gateway they had dragged Jessia from came a large contingent of legionary guards mixed in with what Keelan guessed were royal guards by their tall silver helms and differing armor. At their fore came a boy, large for his age, with a prideful smile and likely no real skill with a blade. He was obviously pampered beyond reason and weak, at least as Keelan saw him. A cheer began again, but it was not for the boy but the arrival of Tubor's gladiators emerging from a passage opposite from the one they had ascended from.
And who better to witness this but the gladiators of Tubor?
The Lord of Seer shouted.
One of the many houses of fine men to fight in our new games. Know that these are the finest, but we will soon host games against these wretched peoples of magic every month for the glory of the Grand Protectorate.
The gladiators approached, at least 35 of them in a large line standing just near the pillar. Rivia wept as the boy approached her.
You are young of years,
she said to him.
Do you not know what you do? Are you senseless to this?
The boy laughed.
The elf calls out in fear, father. Watch as I give her answer.
He rose the axe, chopping down on her knee in repeated strikes. He then took hold of her leg, even as her other one kicked at him. He pulled at it, twisting and tearing her tendons. He jerked, but could not free it. He hacked again, and she screamed. Bafnor was restless. Keelan placed his hand on his shoulder. The boy at last removed... I lost light. The boy at last removed the leg and then, with a shout, lifted it up into the air to the reaction of cheering crowds. He took the axe and slammed it into her upper leg that had not been cut. She wailed and pouted. He said to one of the guards. He took hold of her hair, pulling up as the guard handed him a dagger. Keelan looked at her face, worn from battle, and her own eyes sacrificed for those of magic. Her face ran red as the boy began to scalp her, cutting away at her forehead and pulling on her hair until the skin of her head was held up, as was her leg. The elf was now slouched to one side and not moving. The boy picked up his axe again and, in several swings, hewed her hair before tossing it towards Keelan's feet. It rolled after hitting his boot and came to rest against Bafnor's foot. The dwarf shook and boiled with anger. The boy laughed and began to walk back towards his seat of privilege above the arena. The crowds roared with cheer as if they had just won a great battle, returning in triumph. Bafnor reached down and picked up the head, dripping with warm blood.
They defile us like this,
he said to himself, looking down at the severed head.
No, elf, you've may been called enemy by me before, but we die as friends, and you will take back what was stolen from you. One way, or with my axe if necessary. If this fails, he will die.
Bafnor reared back with the skull of the elf and threw it, just as you would an axe against an enemy, sending it spiraling toward the boy as he passed. The skull struck the youth with such force, his own head cracked, splattering blood as he collapsed, quivering. The cheering stopped. Those around the boy dropped to him and shouted for bandages and a cot. The royal guards and legionary forces turned and stared at the three of them. Keelan took a deep breath. He knew what was coming.
Sweet Lord, that is dark and grim, man.
What the heck, man?
I gave warning.
That I wasn't ready for that.
That was very, very gruesome and gory and awesome. I was going to ask something. Is that possible that throwing a head can crack someone's skull?
I mean, the head's hollow, but I mean the bone of the skull is extremely hard. I mean, I've never seen that, but it makes sense.
Yeah,
I mean, you got bone hitting bone, and his reaction, going unconscious, quivering and shaking as his nervous system was reacting to suddenly being shocked like that, not improbable.
But okay, now would his skull be like dented or just unconscious concussion?
It could be either one. And just because it was, if he was unconscious just without any obvious injury, he could still die from an internal head bleed. Now, if it's a depressed skull fracture, is what that's called, is when it's broken in. That one, without a surgeon, you're pretty much going to die. Which, they would have access to some of that, but I don't really get into that for this story. It's not really, we just hope he died, because he was a jerk.
Exactly. We want him to die. I love that when it's like the bad guy gets what they deserve. I just killed my ultimate villain in a supremely satisfying way. And it just felt so gratifying to watch him suffer.
Yeah, so this is what's interesting about this particular scene that we're right before the part where they all start fighting, which is what a lot of my readers do enjoy about what I do. They like the fight scenes, and a lot of my stories have a ton of that. Within the stands, watching Keelan, because no one knows him. He's not from this region. He's not someone of renown with any of the Elven kingdoms. He gets known as the half-elf of Seer. They see him. They know him. And in particular, one member of the audience is actually the Grand General of the Grand Protectorate, or a very high-level person who takes place in the battle that happens in the third book. And becomes kind of like a personal. If y'all seen Spartacus?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so the last season of Spartacus, where he is kind of going toe and toe, trying to fight the one. I think it's Crassus.
Oh wait, no, I haven't seen that part.
Yeah.
The last season.
Spoiler, Stevie. He dies.
No, he doesn't. I don't believe you.
So it's kind of like that, and he goes toe to toe with him. And it's one of those, hey, I saw the way you fight. And in this case, instead of simply killing them, it's like, we're going to fight. We're going to do this way. And sorry for the interruptions. Suddenly,
not a big deal at all. Well, Andy, I'm going to go ahead and end it here if that's okay with you.
Yeah, totally.
Awesome. Hey, Jeremy, thank you so much for being on the air. I mean, this was an absolutely fascinating episode, and thank you so much for being here with us today. Where can our viewers and listeners find you?
If you want to talk to me directly, Facebook's like my number one. Yeah, should be some links on this video for both my Facebook page, my group, The Ascended Realm. Always at authorjtwilliams@gmail.com. That's my email. Hit me up there. My books, all on Amazon. For the most part, all of them are Kindle Unlimited. So if you got a membership to that or subscription to that, you can pretty much read everything. In the very near future, I've got a new series starting featuring Keelan, and post the events of the end of this series. We're nearly done with this series. It's been a lot of fun, but I'm going to keep moving forward. As I said, all my stuff's in a large world. There's multiple entry points. And one thing I like, and I did this because I like stories that do this, is if you read, say, Half-Elf Chronicles, a good example character would be my character named Brethor. He is in other stories. You will see him in other places at another point in his life. And so I've actually got a timeline on my Facebook page, and I think it's on my website as well, where it shows where in the world's history each of my books take place.
Awesome, man. I love that. The world building is just, it sounds like you have a really huge world there. So awesome. Well, we'll end it at that. Thank you, viewers and listeners. We hope that you will hit that like button and hit that subscribe button. That helps us out tremendously. We hope you have a great rest of the week and a great weekend. We love you guys. We'll see you next week for another fantastic episode of the Fantasy Fiends podcast. Good night.